See Dennis Prager at Cigar Night on Thursday, May 16th at the Bolingbrook Golf Club. Tickets on sale now at 560theanswer.com/cigar.
All right, we're still getting a lot of good signs, slogans, suggestions for this morning's rally. This tweet from at Cigarpuss.
Okay, that's... I'm sure he's going to your cigar event with
I like
Dennis Prager.
R. Kelly wishes he had Jussie's girl. That's pretty
Kim
good.
Fox, Jussie's girl.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is really
I don't know if
good.
Rick Springfield will appreciate it, but that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. All right, very good. Okay, Unplanned, the Abby Johnson movie. We talked to Abby Johnson a few weeks back, released over the weekend. Interesting.
It did well in the box office.
Arrived more than 1,000 theaters had it on Friday. But ads for it, interestingly, rejected by Lifetime, the Hallmark Channel, HGTV, and other cable networks not named Fox.
Pulled in $6.1 million this weekend.
Good piece in the Journal about the R rating and the essential blackout by certain channels, media outlets, by Kansas City Archbishop Naumann in the Wall Street Journal. The R rating and this conduct, what is that signal? Signals Hollywood admitting that abortion is violent. And from the people I have not seen Unplanned yet, but from the people who have seen it, says pretty. If you thought Gosnell was moving,
Oh, I love Gosnell.
yeah, that wait for Unplanned. Also, this against the backdrop of what's going on at the state level. So obviously, you had the infanticide legislation signed into law in New York. KKK Northrum and the Virginia Minstrel Party is working on it in Virginia. And, of course, Governor Jelly Belly and the miniature Democrats in this state are doing the same in Springfield. But interestingly, talked about this before, even in this supermajority cultural Marxist state, supermajorities of Democrats in both chambers, Governor Jelly Belly, who wants to beat Northam and Cuomo as the most pro-infanticide governor in the country. The legislation here that would eliminate parental notification, that would allow non-doctors to perform invasive surgery, abortion, allow for late-term abortions, publicly financed, all not right. Not tabled, but referred to subcommittee. So that means it's not being, the skids aren't being greased for the legislation, in part because 15,000 witness slips filed to testify against the legislation organized by pro-life groups in this state. So the battle has been joined. And interestingly, even more so, Cardinal Cupich of Chicago took time out from carrying on about climate science and minimum wage laws to actually go down to Springfield and testify against these ghoulish legislative measures. Very interesting. And this also is a great segue to a discussion about Pope Francis, because one of the reasons Pope Francis enjoys such popularity is because the leftist media in this country, generally, but particularly in this country, has held him out as much as possible as the first pope who's not Catholic and doesn't believe in the catechism. And they focus on his forays into labor economics and climate science, and not so much on what he has to say about traditional Catholic doctrine as it pertains to family and life and other matters, which is why Paul Kengor's piece at Crisis Magazine was so interesting, because the Pope is so influential. Paul Kengor is a professor of poli-sci at Grove City College, which is one of the colleges that Peyton and Eli are allowed to attend.
Yes.
He is the author of the book Dupes, How America's Adversaries Have Manipulated Progressives for a Century. Paul, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be with you guys. Thanks.
So, I remember some of the statements that Pope Francis made, and I repeat them often when I'm in conversations with leftists about how wonderful Pope Francis is. I ask them,
right.
Do you agree with Pope Francis that the redefinition of marriage is an anthropological regression? And you're met with silence. And that's sort of what you did in this extensive piece in Crisis Magazine, going through some of the Pope's pronouncements on these other cultural and religious matters.
Well, I appreciate that, because that's one of the main reasons I wrote the piece, is because I want conservatives, and I know a lot of conservatives have responded by saying, okay, you've got these 14 statements from Francis. Okay, we love these statements, even if we don't like Francis. We're still not sure what to do with the guy. And I'm saying in part, well, at the very least, share these with liberals, right, who think that they've got a pope here who supports same-sex marriage, pro-choice, all the different stuff that they just like to emotionally, cut and paste on whatever it is that they're projecting out there. And you two started by talking about abortion. Well, point out to liberals that Pope Francis compared abortion to hiring a hitman, right? Hiring a hitman.
Yeah.
And the quote on that is, quote, is it right to hire a hitman to solve a problem? You cannot. It is not right to kill a human being, regardless of how small it is, to solve a problem. It is like hiring a hitman to solve a problem. And people who might say, well, that's just one occasion, and yeah, that's kind of bad, but I don't know. Maybe he was just speaking off the cuff there. Well, how about the one where he compared abortion to Nazi eugenics? And he said, our abortion centers are like Nazis with white gloves. And I could go on and on and on like that. I mean, the guy is probably, in this Peace for Crisis, I gave 14 general statements that will shock liberals. I could give 14 just pro-life statements from Francis that would shock liberals. And no matter what people might think of him on other issues, maybe on building walls, economic redistribution, whatever else, I'll tell you one thing, he's rock solid on the pro-life issue.
He is, but he's not rock solid on building a wall. I remember when he spoke out against President Trump for the first time when he said barriers, we should now have any barriers in between countries. Do you remember that?
Except around the Vatican.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I checked the Drudge report this morning, and he's got one up at the very top. It looks like another one came over the weekend. So, this definitely, Amy, I mean, this is what I would emphasize to people, that for conservatives, he's a mixed bag, right? You're going to be able to pick 3 or 4 issues where he's totally with you, and 3 or 4 issues where he's totally not with you. And certainly immigration would be one of them. And I would point out to people on the immigration issue, and this is not so much a defense of him criticizing Donald Trump on this, it's just a statement of the way it is. And he and Trump actually talked about this in, I think it was May 2017 when Trump visited the Vatican. People need to understand that while Donald Trump is president of the United States and swears a duty to the Constitution, he runs a country that has borders. And so he has a country that has immigration laws. Now, Francis, on the other hand, runs a universal church, and the word Catholic actually means universal, right? And that's a church without borders. So he sees migrants, immigrants, and all he cares about is whether or not they have a safe place to go or a better place to go other than the lousy country that they live in. So Francis is representing a totally different constituency and comes at this at a totally different viewpoint from Trump. And I think in the discussion that they had on this back in 2017, they came to sort of an understanding on that, where Trump's like, all right, I can see your viewpoint, right? And Francis is like, well, I could see yours too. We'll have to agree to disagree on that. And he's been kind of harsh in his criticisms of Trump on that, especially when I've been to the Vatican. It's surrounded by a giant wall, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's I think that people need to understand that that's the main difference. They're representing different constituencies.
Against the backdrop of the sex abuse scandal within the church, Pope Francis has also inveighed against homosexuality. I mean, a lot of the discussion is from the left is about allowing priests to marry, allowing priests to be whatever sexual orientation they are and express that. And Pope Francis has been pretty clear on it.
Yeah, he has. And one of the examples that I give among my 14 statements is that he said no homosexuals in seminaries, period. And the exact quote is, if there's a doubt about homosexuality, he told this to Italian bishops last May, it's better not to have them enter the seminary. This is an exact quote. If you think that the guy is homosexual, don't put him in the seminary. So again, liberals, what do you do about that? And it's not the only time that he said it. And I also give examples where he talks about he's having a discussion with a priest or a bishop from Portugal or Spain, and the guy says something like, "Look, I understand that some of my priests are homosexual, but they're keeping it in the closet, they're living a celibate life. In these cases, that should be okay, right?" And Francis says, "No, that's not okay, right? People like that should not be priests." So it's a very intolerant, right, view by the progressive. Who am I to judge Pope? So I would say to liberals, what do you do with that? What do you do with that, Francis?
I mean,
I would say to conservatives, what do you do with that? You can't ignore that either.
If he was in Canada, he would be charged with a hate crime for saying such things. Frankly, if he's on a college campus here, he'd probably suffer the same fate.
Well, that's exactly right. And he's also said, and this is attributed to him in the infamous Cardinal Vigano letter, Bishop Vigano letter, where he said he said that bishops, quote, must not be left wing. Wow. And what does he mean by that? He said, when I say left wing, I mean homosexual. Which is right. So if you're a left wing if you're a left wing bishop, that means you're a homosexual bishop, according to Francis. And so again, what do you do with that? So this is a lot of this is kind of confounding. It doesn't fit with our conceptions, preconceptions, our, I'll say it, prejudices about Francis, how we look at Francis. And if it leaves you even more confused about Francis, I would say, okay, well, me too. I'm confused by the guy as well. But there are a lot of statements like that about the guy, and the discussion of him tends to leave all of these out, whether you're on the right or the left.
He is Paul Kengor, professor of poli-sci at Grove City College. The book, Dupes, How America's Adversaries Have Manipulated Progressives for a Century, and the column, The Politically Incorrect Francis, is crisismagazine.com. Paul, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
All right. Great to join you guys anytime. Thanks.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy